Hello everyone, Chris Buick here once again for UK Film Review, and today I'm going to talk to you all about the indie feature film Evil inSight, written and directed by both Don Close and Fiore DeRosa. We start with a pair of detectives, Detective Stan Zielinski, played by James Biberi, and Detective Colin Banks, played by Valence Thomas. They receive an anonymous letter that leads to the reopening of a cold case that has been dormant for 10 years or so. And following the clues, they are in fact led to a body. Not just that, they are also led to their seemingly prime suspect, Simeon Kane, who's played by Richard O'Brien. And what they then discover is evidence of a potentially much larger body count. Kane is adamant in his innocence, but he also claims he can actually help the detectives with his uncanny ability to speak with the dead. Obviously, skeptical at first, they reluctantly accept his help, but what they discover is the investigation goes into very dark and sinister places, much more than they could have ever imagined. So the film itself, it's not a slow start. We are witness to a gruesome murder within mere minutes. So it's a film that definitely sets off running and doesn't really stop from there, which is great for actually the tension and pace of the film. It really does its very best to keep you engaged, even if it is a little bumpy at times, which we'll get into. But over the next 90 minutes or so, what you get is this real supernatural detective thriller that really looks to make its world seem authentic and grounded in its characters and its the way it handles things, but trying to offer something different with its supernatural element. The aforementioned writers, Don Close and Fiore DeRosa, they are clearly full of passion for the thriller genre, the detective genre, the supernatural genres. There's a lot of attention to detail to make the film look and feel as good as it can. And for the most part, everything really works. The success of any of these kind of detective cop duo dramas will ultimately hinge on how good the two lead performances are. And I think in both Biberi and Thomas as the lead detectives, Biberi especially with the most to do here, we have two great actors who give really grounded performances, and they help really draw us into this world that feels real, and they feel part of a real process in terms of police procedures and things like that help really keep everything grounded even when it goes into the supernatural. And their chemistry is great. They're very dynamic on screen. They I wouldn't say force, but they compel you to engage and keep you engaged, which is key for the film. There are other aspects, however, that do work against that, and that comes mostly down to the supporting cast, who, Richard O'Brien aside as Simeon Kane, he's actually a very good villain, very nuanced, very layered, bit of depth to him that otherwise could have been just a one-note type character. But the rest of the cast are kind of just there to deliver exposition, explain, regurgitate details that we might need to know, rather than giving themselves full personalities and full semblance of selves. Which is something the film does quite often throughout, and it can become a bit of a habit, a crutch it leans on. Because the film is clever in other ways of moving story forward, but it's a shame to see it hamper itself with the same tricks, rather than adopting for a more show don't tell approach. But the other thing that could theoretically have derailed things but doesn't, thankfully, is the supernatural element, which I think works relatively well. It is the very hook that sets this apart from your average cop thriller. And it's a very fun premise. It's a fun mystery to go on, keeps things going in new directions, keeps you guessing. The visual effects are mostly fine. There are some very noticeable dips in quality from time to time, and that does affect the illusion and the tension. But the film does pick back up relatively quickly on those occasions, so it's not too bad. As a whole, for this film, what I would say is the positives definitely outweigh the negatives. Its roughness is more than made up for by its compelling story, good protagonists, and everything else that's going for it. So I would say for an hour and a half of your time, Evil inSight is definitely worth a go, especially if you're into the supernatural thriller, detective dramas, that kind of thing.